They were daughters, wives, even mothers, yet behind calm faces hid cold calculation, jealousy, revenge, or raw brutality. From suburban crimes that rocked neighborhoods to international headlines that stunned the world, these Asian women didn't just break the law, they shattered every expectation of who could commit such horrific acts. In today's episode, we're diving into the chilling cases of the most feared Asian women behind bars. Each story is packed with betrayal, bloodshed, and consequences that left families devastated and communities reeling. From poisoned tea to bloody murder scenes, these aren't just criminal cases. They're the terrifying truths behind real-life nightmares. Buckle up, as the calmest faces often hide the darkest secrets. Chung Chui-ping, known as Sister Ping. Crime, human smuggling, hostage-taking, money laundering. Chung Chui-ping, infamously known as Sister Ping, was a Chinese national who masterminded one of the most extensive human smuggling operations in history. Operating from New York City's Chinatown, she facilitated the illegal entry of over 3,000 Chinese immigrants into the United States between 1984 and 2000. Charging up to $45,000 per person, her enterprise amassed more than $40 million, making her one of the most successful snakeheads, a term for human smugglers from China. Sister Ping's operations were notorious not just for their scale, but also for their brutality. She collaborated with the violent Fuqing gang to enforce payments, often holding immigrants hostage in deplorable conditions until their families paid the exorbitant fees. Her methods included threats, beatings, and even murder, instilling fear in both her victims and rivals. In 2000, Sister Ping was arrested in Hong Kong and extradited to the United States. She was convicted in 2006 on multiple charges, including human smuggling and money laundering, and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Ping's health had deteriorated in prison, with high cholesterol and blood lipids. She lost 17 pounds in the last 2 years of her life. Aged 65, Ping died quietly at noon on April 24, 2014, surrounded by her family at the Federal Medical Center Carswell in Texas. Her funeral took place on May 23, 2014 at the Bo Fook Funeral Home on Canal Street in Manhattan with thousands of mourners. Her body was laid to rest at Kensico Cemetery in Valhalla, New York. Sister Ping's legacy remains a stark reminder of the dark underbelly of immigration and the lengths to which individuals will go for a chance at a better life, often falling prey to predators like her. Miyuki Ishikawa, Japan's baby farmer of death. Crime, multiple counts of infanticide and professional negligence. Miyuki Ishikawa, a Japanese midwife, earned infamy as one of the country's most prolific child killers in the post-war era. Known as the Demon Midwife, she operated during the 1940s when Japan was struggling with poverty, overpopulation, and social collapse following World War II. Working at the Kotobuki Maternity Hospital in Tokyo, Miyuki began targeting unwanted or illegitimate infants abandoned by their families. Instead of finding them homes or care, she neglected these newborns to death, allowing starvation, disease, and dehydration to take their lives. Rather than hiding her crimes, Miyuki monetized them. She began charging desperate parents large sums of money to take custody of their unwanted babies, promising to find them care or adoptive families. In reality, she let the babies die in horrific conditions. Her husband, Takeshi Ishikawa, and a doctor named Shiro Nakayama assisted her by falsifying death certificates to cover up the mounting fatalities. Authorities later estimated that over 100 infants may have died under her care, although she was only convicted for a portion of those deaths. The case shocked Japan. In 1948, Miyuki Ishikawa was arrested and charged with infanticide and professional negligence, resulting in death. Despite the staggering number of victims, she received a surprisingly lenient sentence of just 8 years, later reduced to 4 years on appeal, due in part to the government's failure to provide adequate child welfare systems, which her defense cited in court. Her husband and the doctor also received light sentences. Miyuki's actions forced Japan to confront the grim state of post-war maternal health care, child protection services, and legal accountability for medical professionals. Her case is still referenced in criminal justice courses and ethical debates about systemic neglect and medical malpractice. Although her exact post-prison life remains obscure, Miyuki Ishikawa served her time at Tochigi Women's Prison in Japan, one of the country's primary facilities for female offenders. Her legacy as a cold, calculated killer of newborns has secured her place as one of the most feared women in Japanese criminal history. Phoolan Devi, India's bandit queen turned convicted outlaw. Crime: multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, banditry, and arson. Phoolan Devi, born into a low-caste family in rural Uttar Pradesh, India, endured a childhood riddled with poverty, abuse, and systemic discrimination. Married off at the age of 11 to a man 3 times her age, she escaped years of mistreatment and eventually fell in with a gang of bandits operating in the ravines of the Chambal Valley. After being kidnapped by the gang, Phoolan rose through the ranks, partly due to her fierce resilience and strategic mind, and eventually led her own gang that came to symbolize resistance against upper caste oppression. Her most infamous crime occurred in 1981, when she and her gang entered the village of Behmai, allegedly in retaliation for her prior assault and humiliation by upper caste Thakur men. There, they executed 20 men believed to be responsible or complicit. This act became known as the Behmai Massacre, a bloodbath that cemented her status as both a feared outlaw and a folk hero, depending on whom you asked. The Indian press dubbed her the Bandit Queen, and her legend grew throughout the nation. Phoolan Devi was charged with murder, kidnapping, banditry, and arson in connection to multiple raids and killings. She surrendered in 1983 under the condition that she would not receive the death penalty and that her gang members would face reduced sentences. After surrendering with dramatic media attention, she was taken into custody and awaited trial for over a decade. Phoolan Devi was held in Gwalior Central Jail and later in Tihar Jail in New Delhi, one of India's most high-security prison complexes. During her incarceration, her case drew national and international attention, especially as it touched on caste-based violence, gender abuse, and political corruption. After spending 11 years in prison without trial, she was released in 1994 and entered politics, later becoming a member of parliament. However, her past caught up with her, and in 2001, she was assassinated outside her home in New Delhi by a man seeking revenge for the Behmai Massacre. Despite her violent past, many remember her as a symbol of rebellion against caste and gender oppression, while others regard her as a mass murderer who took justice into her own hands. Jessica Kumala Wongso, the cyanide coffee killer. Crime: premeditated cyanide poisoning and murder. Jessica Kumala Wongso, born in 1988 in Jakarta, Indonesia, is an Indonesian national with Australian permanent residency. She became the center of one of the most sensational murder trials in Indonesia's recent history. Jessica, a graduate of Billy Blue College of Design in Sydney, was described as quiet and intelligent. However, her life took a dramatic turn after the suspicious death of her friend, Wayan Mirna Salihin, in 2016, a case that captured nationwide attention and quickly earned Jessica a chilling nickname, the Cyanide Coffee Killer. On January 6, 2016, Jessica met Mirna and another friend at Olivier Cafe in Jakarta. Jessica arrived early and ordered drinks, including a Vietnamese iced coffee for Mirna. Moments after sipping the coffee, Myrna collapsed and began foaming at the mouth. She was rushed to the hospital but died shortly afterward. The autopsy revealed that she had been poisoned with cyanide, and CCTV footage from the cafe showed Jessica's suspicious behavior, including nervously arranging the drinks and acting oddly before Myrna arrived. Investigators found this evidence highly incriminating. Jessica was arrested and charged with premeditated murder. During her high-profile trial, prosecutors laid out a theory that Jessica had a deep-seated grudge against Myrna, possibly related to Myrna advising Jessica to end a toxic relationship. The defense argued that there was no physical evidence linking Jessica to the cyanide, but the court sided with the prosecution, citing circumstantial evidence and behavioral cues. In October 2016, Jessica was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Her appeals to Indonesia's High Court and Supreme Court were both rejected. She was charged with premeditated cyanide poisoning murder of her friend, Wayan Myrna Salihin. Jessica Kumala Wongso is currently serving her sentence at Pondok Bambu Women's Prison in Jakarta, one of Indonesia's most prominent correctional facilities for female inmates. Despite her conviction, public fascination with the case has continued, with documentaries and deep dives exploring whether justice was truly served or if unanswered questions remain. Kanai Kijima, the marriage fraud murderer, Japan. Crime: serial murder through poisoning. Kanai Kijima, born in 1974 in Hokkaido, Japan, gained notoriety as a con artist and serial killer who targeted men through marriage fraud. Between 2007 and 2009, she orchestrated the deaths of at least 3 men, all of whom she met through online dating services. Kijima's modus operandi involved luring men with the promise of marriage, extracting financial support, and subsequently poisoning them with carbon monoxide to stage their deaths as suicides. Kanai Kijima's known victim was a 41-year-old unemployed man from Saitama Prefecture, whom she met through an online dating site in 2009. Desperate for companionship, the man quickly became emotionally attached and provided Kijima with money and gifts, believing they were headed toward marriage. On August 6, 2009, he was found dead in his car from carbon monoxide poisoning, with a charcoal stove placed inside and the windows sealed, a setup that initially led authorities to suspect suicide. However, investigations later revealed that Kijima had purchased the stove and sleeping pills found in his system, and surveillance placed her near the scene prior to his death. His death marked the beginning of Kijima's deadly pattern of exploiting and eliminating men for financial gain. Similar incidents followed, with 2 more men found dead under comparable circumstances. Investigations revealed that Kijima had financially exploited these men before their deaths. The case unraveled after the near-simultaneous deaths of multiple men raised red flags with police. While initially ruled as suicides, further investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. All the victims had recently transferred large sums of money to Kijima, and autopsies showed inconsistencies, including the presence of sleeping agents and unusual placement of the stoves. Forensic evidence, financial records, and surveillance footage helped tie her to the scenes of the crimes. In 2012, a Tokyo court found her guilty of 3 murders, citing her selfish and despicable motives. She was sentenced to death, and her appeal was rejected by Japan's Supreme Court in 2017. Her case has since become one of Japan's most chilling examples of calculated murder masked by romance. Kanai Kijima is currently on death row at the Tokyo Detention House, a facility known for housing inmates awaiting execution. She is the 15th woman to be condemned to death in the post-war period, and the first to be convicted by a lay judge. Kijima's case shocked the nation, highlighting the dangers of online dating scams and the lengths to which individuals might go for financial gain. Her calculated approach and lack of remorse have left a lasting impact on Japan's criminal history. Sararat Rangsiwuthaporn, Ms. Cyanide of Thailand. Crime: serial murder via cyanide poisoning. Sararat Rangsiwuthaporn, a 36-year-old Thai woman, shocked the nation when she was convicted of murdering her friend, Siraporn Kanwong, using cyanide. The crime occurred during a trip to Ratchaburi province in April 2023. Investigations revealed that Sararat had a history of targeting wealthy acquaintances, swindling them out of substantial sums before poisoning them. Her motive was largely attributed to a severe gambling addiction, which drove her to commit these heinous acts. Following her arrest, authorities linked Sararat to 14 other suspicious deaths dating back to 2015, all involving similar patterns of financial exploitation and cyanide poisoning. Despite pleading not guilty, evidence such as the presence of cyanide in the victim's systems and missing personal belongings pointed to her guilt. In November 2024, she was sentenced to death for the murder of Kanwong. Her ex-husband, a former police officer, and her lawyer were also convicted for assisting her in evading prosecution. Sararat faces 13 more murder trials and has been charged with approximately 80 offenses in total. This case reveals the reality of how personal vices like gambling addiction can escalate into a series of calculated and deadly crimes. Sararat's actions have left an indelible mark on Thailand's criminal history. Lin Yu-ju, Taiwan's Nantu poisoning wife. Crime: serial murder via poisoning for insurance fraud. Lin Yu-ju was a seemingly ordinary woman from Tainan, Taiwan, who would go on to commit one of the most cold-blooded and financially motivated murder sprees in the country's recent history. Between 2008 and 2009, Lin poisoned 3 of her closest relatives, her mother, her mother-in-law, and her husband, using prescription sedatives and painkillers. Her crimes were not committed out of rage or revenge, but rather carefully planned for monetary gain. Lin was drowning in debt, primarily from a severe gambling addiction, and believed that by taking out life insurance policies on her family members, she could settle her financial troubles once and for all. Her first known victim was her own mother, who died under suspicious circumstances in their shared home. Lin later moved to Puli Township in Nantu County, where her next victim was her mother-in-law. Both deaths were initially believed to be natural or accidental, but it wasn't until her husband also died in similar fashion that suspicions escalated. Investigators discovered that Lin had taken out large life insurance policies on each of her victims prior to their deaths and had received payouts amounting to millions of new Taiwan dollars. Autopsies and toxicology reports later confirmed the presence of sedatives and other controlled substances in the victims' systems. Lin was arrested in 2009 and confessed to the killings during her trial. She showed little remorse, which further fueled public outrage across Taiwan. In 2013, the Supreme Court of Taiwan handed down a death sentence declaring her crimes as premeditated, heartless, and committed against her own kin for financial gain. She appealed, but the sentence was upheld. Taiwan's legal system takes particular notice of cases involving family betrayal, and Lin's calculated targeting of loved ones for profit stood out as particularly heinous. Currently, Lin Yu-ju is imprisoned at Taichung Women's Prison, a high-security facility housing female offenders, including those sentenced to death. As of 2025, she is the only woman on Taiwan's death row, serving as a grim reminder of how gambling addiction and financial desperation can fuel unspeakable crimes. Her case remains one of Taiwan's most chilling examples of familial betrayal and calculated murder for financial gain, K.D. Kempama, India's cyanide Malika. Crime: serial murder via cyanide poisoning for theft. K.D. Kempama, notoriously known as Cyanide Malika, is India's first convicted female serial killer and one of the most feared women in the country's criminal history. Born in Kagalipura near Bengaluru, Karnataka, Kempama initially worked as a housemaid and later dabbled in money lending and other odd jobs. After facing financial ruin and being abandoned by her husband, she turned to crime. What started as petty thefts eventually escalated into a chilling series of murders that would shock the nation. Between 1999 and 2007, Kempama coldly orchestrated the deaths of 6 women, all for financial gain. She targeted middle-aged women who visited temples regularly and were known for their spiritual beliefs. Posing as a deeply religious devotee herself, Kempama would befriend her victims, offering to perform special rituals to rid them of personal or familial troubles. Her modus operandi involved luring the women to isolated temples, convincing them to dress in their best clothes and jewelry for the ritual. Once there, she administered cyanide-laced prasad, a religious offering, claiming it was part of the spiritual process. Moments later, the women would collapse, and Kempama would steal their gold jewelry and valuables before fleeing the scene. Authorities initially failed to connect the murders, assuming they were natural deaths or suicides. However, patterns began to emerge, and Kempama was finally apprehended on December 31, 2008, when she attempted to sell jewelry belonging to one of her victims. During interrogation, she confessed in chilling detail to the 6 murders. She showed little remorse, explaining that desperation and the need to survive led her down a dark path. Her confessions helped police close multiple unsolved murder cases, and her trial swiftly followed due to the weight of the evidence. In 2010, K.D. Kempama was sentenced to death for multiple murders, although her sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. As of 2025, she remains incarcerated in Parapana Agrahara Central Prison in Bangalore, one of the largest and most secure facilities in southern India. Despite her age, her name still evokes horror in the minds of those familiar with the case. She has become a symbol of how manipulation, trust, and religious faith were weaponized for deadly gain, and her legacy continues to serve as a stark reminder of how seemingly ordinary individuals can harbor unimaginable darkness. Kim Sun-ja, South Korea's cyanide killer. Crime: serial murder via cyanide poisoning for financial gain. Kim Sun-ja, born in 1939 in Seoul, South Korea, was a housewife who became one of the country's most infamous female serial killers. Between 1986 and 1988, she poisoned 6 individuals, 5 of whom died using beverages laced with potassium cyanide. Her victims were primarily creditors and acquaintances from whom she had borrowed money. Driven by a gambling addiction and the desire to maintain her lavish lifestyle, Kim resorted to murder to escape her mounting debts. Her modus operandi involved inviting her victims for a drink, during which she would offer them a beverage containing cyanide. The sudden and unexplained deaths of her acquaintances eventually aroused suspicion, leading to an investigation. Kim was apprehended on September 2, 1988, and confessed to the murders during interrogation. She was convicted on 5 counts of murder and sentenced to death. On December 30, 1997, Kim Sun-ja was executed by hanging at Daejeon Prison, making her one of the last individuals to be executed in South Korea before the country enacted a moratorium on capital punishment. Le Tan Van, Vietnam's cyanide witch. Crime: serial murder via cyanide poisoning for financial gain. Le Tan Van, born on December 5, 1956 in Saigon, now Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, was a Vietnamese serial killer infamously known as the Cyanide Witch. Between 1998 and 2001, she, along with her husband and accomplice, Du Dong Quang, poisoned at least 13 individuals using cyanide. Their victims were often acquaintances or individuals they had defrauded, with the primary motive being financial gain. The couple's method involved luring victims with promises of lucrative business deals or loans, only to poison them and steal their assets. The crimes spanned several regions, including Giang Nai, Ho Chi Minh City, and Binh Duong. The duo's activities went undetected for years due to the calculated nature of their operations and the lack of immediate suspicion surrounding the sudden deaths. However, their downfall began when inconsistencies in their stories and the pattern of deaths among their associates raised red flags. Authorities eventually apprehended them on October 15, 2001. During the investigation, it was revealed that the couple had not only committed multiple murders, but also engaged in robbery and illegal possession of poison. In 2005, after a thorough trial, Lê Thanh Van was convicted of 13 counts of murder, along with charges of robbery and illegal possession of poison. She was sentenced to death and subsequently executed by firing squad on October 26, 2005, in Thu Dau Mot, Vietnam. Her husband and accomplice Du Dong Quang also faced legal repercussions for his role in the crimes. Lê Thanh Van's case remains one of the most notorious in Vietnam's criminal history, highlighting the depths of human deceit and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Tamara Ivanutina, the Kyiv poisoner. Crime: serial poisoning using thallium for personal vendettas. Tamara Ivanutina, born in 1941 in Tula, Soviet Union, became infamously known as the Kyiv poisoner for her series of poisonings that spanned over a decade. Between 1976 and 1987, she, along with her family, used thallium, a highly toxic substance, to poison at least 9 individuals, including her first husband, in-laws, neighbors, and even school children. The poisonings were often motivated by personal grievances, such as disputes over property or perceived slights. Ivanutina's method involved lacing food with thallium, often in school cafeterias where she worked as a dishwasher. Her actions went undetected for years due to the slow-acting nature of thallium poisoning and the lack of immediate suspicion. The investigation into her crimes began after a series of unexplained illnesses and deaths in Kyiv led authorities to suspect foul play. Upon searching Ivanutina's residence, investigators discovered a jar containing Clarice solution, a highly toxic thallium compound used in geological studies. During her trial, Ivanutina admitted to the poisonings but later recanted, claiming her confessions were coerced. Despite her claims, the evidence against her was overwhelming. In 1990, Ivanutina was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. She was executed by shooting at Lukyanivska prison in Kyiv, making her one of the few women executed in the post-Stalin Soviet Union. Ivanutina's case remains one of the most chilling examples of serial poisoning in Soviet history, highlighting the deadly potential of thallium and the lengths to which individuals can go to settle personal scores. Kulthum Akbari, Iran's Black Widow. Crime: serial poisoning of husbands and lovers. Kulthum Akbari's case stunned Iran and the wider world due to the sheer number of her alleged victims and the methodical way she is said to have eliminated them. Arrested in late 2023, Akbari reportedly confessed to poisoning at least 11 men over the course of 2 decades. Her victims were primarily her husbands and lovers, many of whom died suddenly under mysterious circumstances. Investigations uncovered a disturbing pattern of multiple marriages. She is believed to have been married 19 times, with the suspicious deaths of 18 men who were considered her concubine husbands. Akbari's modus operandi involved using poison, likely administered through food or drink, to silently and gradually kill her victims. The slow-acting nature of the toxins meant that many deaths were initially attributed to natural causes or illness, allowing her to continue her deadly pattern for years without arousing suspicion. The scale of the killings was only uncovered after family members of some victims began raising concerns about the frequency and circumstances surrounding the deaths, triggering an investigation by Iranian authorities. Her arrest came after years of growing suspicion and detailed police work, which included exhuming bodies and conducting toxicology tests that confirmed poisoning. Authorities are still piecing together the full extent of her crimes, as it is suspected that some deaths may never be fully investigated due to the passage of time. Akbari's case has sparked intense public debate in Iran about domestic violence, women's rights, and the judicial system's ability to detect and prevent such prolonged serial killings. Currently, Kulthum Akbari is in custody, awaiting trial in Iran. Her case remains active with ongoing forensic examinations and legal proceedings expected to reveal more about her motives, methods, and the true number of victims. The chilling story of the Black Widow continues to unfold, serving as a grim reminder of how long a serial offender can evade justice in complex social and legal environments. Seema Mohan Gavit and Renuka Kiran Shinde, India's infamous kidnapping duo. Crimes, kidnapping, and murder of at least 13 children between 1990 and 1996. Seema Gavit and Renuka Shinde, half-sisters from Pune, Maharashtra, embarked on a series of heinous crimes during the early 1990s, operating primarily in crowded areas like temples and fairs across western Maharashtra. They kidnapped children under the age of 5. These children were used as distractions during their thefts. If caught, the sisters would exploit the children's innocence to evade suspicion. Tragically, many of these children were murdered when they became liabilities or ceased to be useful. The sisters were arrested in November 1996, along with Renuka's husband, Kiran Shinde, who later turned approver and provided crucial testimony against them. Their mother, Anjana Bai, who was also involved in the crimes, passed away in 1998 before the trial commenced. In 2001, the Kolhapur Sessions Court convicted the sisters of kidnapping 13 children and murdering 6 of them. The Bombay High Court upheld the conviction in 2004, and the Supreme Court confirmed the death sentence in 2006. In 2014, their mercy petitions were rejected by President Pranab Mukherjee. However, in 2022, the Bombay High Court commuted their death sentences to life imprisonment, citing gross and unexplained delay in deciding their mercy pleas. The court emphasized that such delays had a dehumanizing effect on the convicts. The sisters are currently serving their sentences at Yerwada Central Jail in Pune. The Gavit sisters case remains one of India's most chilling examples of female criminality, highlighting the dark potential within familial bonds and the devastating impact of their actions on innocent lives. Jung Yoo-jung, South Korea's true crime copycat. Crime, murder, and corpse abandonment. Jung Yoo-jung, a 24-year-old South Korean woman, committed one of the most disturbing crimes in recent memory, fueled by an obsession with true crime media. Living a socially isolated life and spending most of her time indoors, Jung became consumed with watching crime documentaries and reading murder fiction. Her growing curiosity about the act of murder turned into a dangerous obsession. Determined to experience what it felt like to kill, she meticulously plotted a real-life murder, using her knowledge of true crime stories as inspiration. In May 2023, Jung executed her plan by pretending to be a high school student, seeking private English lessons. She contacted a 26-year-old freelance tutor online and scheduled a session at the tutor's home in the city of Busan. Jung arrived dressed in a school uniform to appear younger and less threatening. Once inside, she brutally stabbed the unsuspecting woman over 100 times with a kitchen knife she had brought along. According to forensic investigators, the overkill nature of the attack suggested extreme aggression and a deeply disturbed mental state. Following the murder, Jung attempted to cover her tracks by dismembering the victim's body using tools she had prepared in advance. She placed the remains into a suitcase and called a taxi, heading toward a wooded area near the Nakdong River to dispose of the body. Her behavior during the taxi ride, including the sight of blood-stained luggage and her anxious demeanor, raised suspicions. The taxi driver reported the incident to authorities, which led to a swift investigation. The body was later discovered near the river, and surveillance footage helped trace the crime back to Jung. When interrogated by the police, Jung confessed to the murder, shockingly stating that she killed out of curiosity. Authorities confirmed she had no prior connection to the victim and that the crime was completely premeditated. In November 2023, the Busan District Court sentenced her to life imprisonment, emphasizing the calculated and emotionless nature of her actions. In May 2024, South Korea's Supreme Court rejected her appeal for a lighter sentence. Jung Yoo-jung remains incarcerated at the Busan Detention Center, marking her case as one of South Korea's most chilling examples of crime inspired by media obsession. From quiet villages to bustling cities, these women left behind a trail of mystery, fear, and devastation. Each case reveals how deep deception can run and how justice eventually caught up. Behind prison bars, they remain feared, forgotten, and infamous. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories you won't hear anywhere else. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never underestimate a quiet face.